And she also attacked Twitter and Elon and finished it all with "fuck Donald Trump." So it's one of the reasons why she's not like the ideal choice for the lead role in Sweet Snow White.
Response to the presidential election, Zegler had a very public meltdown on her Instagram stories. She wrote, quote, "F you, Donald Trump." Then she proceeded to insult the 75 million Americans who voted for him. Quote, "I find myself speechless in the midst of this. Another 4 years of hatred, leading us towards a world I do not want to live in." Yeah, you always got to love starting with F you and then ending with, complaining about all the hatred in the world.
She attacked Twitter and Elon and finished with "fuck Donald Trump."
Man.
Hello, Disney. You're going to have to redo your film again because this woman is a pig and you fired Gina Carano for far less than this nonsense.
In a jaw-dropping twist, Donald Trump has taken aim at Snow White star Rachel Zegler after Disney's big announcement of a brand new remake. The president, never one to hold back, allegedly slammed the young star, sending shockwaves through both Hollywood and political circles.
Her own, and that upset a lot of people, including Megyn Kelly, that has been very vocal about Disney recasting this movie and not having Rachel be part of it anymore, even though she has, come out and apologized.
Will Donald Trump get involved himself in the new Snow White remake, or is it just a wild Hollywood rumor? Either way, the internet is in full meltdown mode. Let's dive into the drama and unpack the headline everyone's talking about. At first, Rachel Zegler had the world at her feet. After landing the iconic role of Snow White, she was expected to become the next Disney legend, but things unraveled fast when her interviews started going viral for the wrong reasons. She mocked the original film's romance and even called the prince irrelevant.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
In one now infamous clip, Rachel Zegler casually said, "People will wait in line to see me." That one sentence, delivered with a smug grin, was replayed thousands of times across social media, and it became the symbol of what fans saw as everything wrong with the remake. Not just disrespectful, but entitled.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Suddenly, Rachel Zegler was getting quietly pulled from interviews, press junkets, and red carpets. It wasn't just Rachel Zegler's comments that made people angry, it was the entire tone of the film. The reboot, initially pitched as a modern revision of the 1937 classic, stripped away the love story, reimagined the dwarves, and promised a strong female lead who doesn't dream about true love. But instead of being seen as empowering, it came across as cynical and joyless. Disney fans, especially those who grew up on the original film, felt alienated. They didn't want the classic rewritten. They wanted it honored. The outrage was so overwhelming that Disney's own marketing team went into crisis mode. And just when the noise seemed to reach its loudest, someone else added fuel to the fire. That someone was President Donald Trump. He bluntly called the Snow White reboot a disgrace to American storytelling and accused Disney of pushing propaganda instead of wonder. He singled out Rachel Zegler's interviews as proof that the studio had completely lost touch with its audience.
They keep going along this path, they're going to go bankrupt. They really are going to be in serious trouble. They can't keep churning out trash IP based on some of the greatest IP ever created and hope that audiences are going to keep showing up at the box office.
Shortly after the viral backlash reached its peak, Disney made a move that sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. They announced a completely new Snow White remake, effectively rebooting a reboot. For a company as massive and brand conscious as Disney, this was nothing short of an emergency maneuver. At a private media event, Disney executives admitted that they had misread their audience. Internally, the tone was grim. Reports from inside the company describe high-level meetings filled with blame shifting, damage control, and desperate brainstorming brainstorming sessions about how to fix the studio's broken relationship with fans. This wasn't just about one bad movie. It was about protecting the Disney brand before it collapsed under the weight of its own controversies. The new Snow White project was framed as a return to classic storytelling, a phrase deliberately chosen to win back the fans they had alienated. Gone was the revisionist tone. This time, they promised to honor the legacy of the original film with a focus on charm, heart, and timeless magic.
Snow White only made $3.7 million on Friday, coming in a distant third behind Working Man and a re-release of Chosen the Last Supper. Rachel Zegler destroyed a $1 billion franchise. This is the face of a franchise destroyer.
Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler, who had once been the centerpiece of Disney's marketing strategy, had seemingly vanished. She stopped appearing in interviews. Her name was no longer attached to promotional campaigns. Insiders claimed she had been quietly removed from future Disney plans, with some even suggesting that internal conversations had begun about blacklisting her from further studio collaborations. The silence was deafening. For months, Rachel Zegler had been everywhere, featured in magazines, appearing at press events, posting clips across social media, then nothing. It was as if Disney had cut the cord completely, and the industry noticed. Other studios started reconsidering projects with her. Branding deals dried up. The once rising star was now being viewed as a liability, all because a few interviews spiraled into a reputational disaster. It wasn't just her comments, it was the perception that she had embarrassed the company and derailed one of its most iconic brands.
She was also just a spoiled, entitled, narcissistic brat who was perfectly willing, because she's not well, she might be stupid, but she's not so dumb that she didn't realize that by, for example, coming out and saying that all Trump supporters deserve to suffer for like, she's smart enough to know that of course that's going to upset a large portion of the potential audience for this project that I'm on.
If things looked chaotic from the outside, they were 10 times worse on the inside. According to leaked memos and anonymous sources, Disney's departments were completely out of sync during the rollout of the original Snow White remake. Marketing was promoting one version of the film, an empowered, edgy retelling, while PR was scrambling to soften that image with more traditional, family-focused messaging. Creative teams fought back against executive mandates, especially over the removal of classic elements like the prince or the dwarves. What began as a creative reinvention devolved into a Frankenstein film built from conflicting agendas and rushed rewrites. Even worse, there were early warnings. Test screenings had already shown that the film wasn't connecting with audiences, but executives ignored the signs, believing the Disney brand could survive any storm. They were wrong, and by the time the trailer dropped, it was too late to change course. The backlash had already been set in motion. The box office loss was painful, but the merchandise failure hit Disney in a different way. Toys, costumes, apparel, and tie-in books tied to the Rachel Zegler-led Snow White project were expected to dominate retail shelves. Instead, they sat untouched. Major retailers began slashing prices just weeks after launch, with unsold stock piling up in warehouses.
Fun fact, the new Snow White has only made $100 million in the global box office. Production budget was $350 million. That's not including the marketing budget. Hollywood films can be upward of 100% of production. So this is going to, again, lose hundreds of millions of dollars. And how is Rachel Zegler handling this?
Insiders from Disney's consumer products division revealed that millions of dollars in revenue simply vanished. Holiday sales underperformed dramatically. Licensing partners backed away, and Disney's broader merchandise ecosystem, reliant on beloved characters driving consumer demand, was now in a desperate position. This wasn't just about one product line underperforming, it was a wake-up call. If audiences were rejecting the characters, the story, and even the toys, then something was fundamentally broken, and Disney, a company built on selling dreams in plastic packaging, could no longer afford to ignore it. What started as isolated internet complaints quickly evolved into a widespread cultural revolt. YouTube creators posted takedowns, film critics wrote essays, and ordinary fans, especially parents, began openly questioning whether Disney had lost touch with the very people it was supposed to entertain.
The star, Rachel Zegler, is unbelievably charmless in public. Studios really need to go back to what they originally did, which was tell your stars to shut up and not say things, because no one is paying to hear your star say offensive things off the screen.
On Reddit and X, massive threads broke down the problems scene by scene. People weren't just angry, they were disappointed. They felt like Disney had turned its back on the wonder and warmth that once made its stories so iconic. Instead of joy and enchantment, the film had become a lecture. Instead of nostalgia, they got mockery. For some, the moment Donald Trump weighed in was simply the tipping point. But for most, the frustration had been building for years. Fans who had grown up on Disney now felt like the studio was ashamed of its own past. And with Snow White being the very first feature film in the company's history, the backlash carried even more emotional weight. This wasn't just a movie, it was a legacy, and in the eyes of many, that legacy had been betrayed. With the backlash in full swing and public trust at an all-time low, Disney realized it couldn't just change the cast and reshoot a few scenes. It had to rebuild Snow White from the ground up, and that meant returning to the heart of the story that started it all. Insiders revealed that the new reboot would strip away the experimental tone of the failed version and lean heavily into what made the 1937 classic so beloved. That includes bringing back the original fairy tale atmosphere, restoring the romance, and preserving the musical core of the film. Songs like Someday My Prince Will Come and Hi Ho are set to return, alongside fresh compositions designed to complement the nostalgic magic, not overwrite it. Disney's goal isn't just to correct a misstep, it's to repair an emotional bond that had been quietly fraying for years. According to early reports, the studio brought in legacy animators and story consultants from the Disney Renaissance era, the same era that gave us Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid, and The Lion King. These creatives were tasked with helping the new Snow White recapture the tone, pacing, and emotional arc of Disney's golden age. For the first time in years, it looks like Disney is no longer trying to reinvent the wheel. It's trying to remember why it worked in the first place. One of the most anticipated announcements tied to the reboot is the casting of a new Snow White. While Disney has yet to confirm a name, rumors suggest the studio is actively searching for an actress who embodies classic Hollywood charm, someone who can sing, connect emotionally with audiences, and avoid political landmines during press tours. Media training is reportedly being revamped from the ground up. After the Rachel Zegler incident, Disney is placing a heavy emphasis on keeping cast messaging aligned with the tone of the film. No more snide remarks about past Disney stories. No more trying to be edgy for TikTok clips. This time, the studio wants their lead to represent innocence, elegance, and warmth. The very qualities that made Snow White iconic in the first place. In the aftermath of the movie's collapse, Disney's internal review uncovered major gaps in its communication strategy. Public relations, marketing, and even directors were reportedly not aligned on how to present the film or how to handle backlash once it began. One executive described it as a house divided where no one had the power or the courage to take control of the narrative.
Snow White, there's been an enormous amount of controversy surrounding Snow White, obviously, because of everything from the original decisions with regard to casting to the insane, hardcore, nasty leftism of Rachel Zegler attacking her own co-star for being Israeli, and generally attacking men and suggesting that Snow White was a sexist story and all this. Controversy has been dogging this movie since the very beginning.
But now, that's changing. As part of a broader reboot initiative, Disney is implementing stricter internal controls on media messaging. That includes tighter oversight of actor interviews, vetting of public statements, and media training that focuses on preserving brand harmony. Future cast members will be coached not just on how to talk about their roles, but how to embody the values Disney wants the film to reflect. While some critics view this as corporate censorship, others say it's long overdue. In an age where one offhand comment can go viral and derail an entire franchise, studios are realizing that storytelling doesn't stop when the cameras stop rolling. Every interview, every quote, every tweet, it all builds the perception of the brand. And after what happened with Snow White, Disney is done leaving that up to chance. One of the biggest debates that emerged from this entire fiasco is whether Disney can still tell classic stories in a modern world. Can a studio known for fairy tale endings, singing princesses, and old-fashioned romance survive in an industry obsessed with deconstruction, subversion, and political messaging?
You can see it in the early pressers for all of this. They were totally going to remake all of Snow White. They were going to destroy Snow White. That was their intended goal. They were just too successful at it, and now they lost all their money. So they bought in the very top of the market for wokeness, and now they've lost all their money, and they're upset about it, right?
For years, Disney has tried to walk that line, modernizing its characters without alienating its fan base. Sometimes it worked, other times it blew up in their faces. But with Snow White, the balance completely broke. The attempt to fix the story came across as dismissive and even hostile toward the original film's message. Instead of evolving the fairy tale, it felt like Disney was trying to erase it. Fans didn't just see a bad film, they saw a studio embarrassed by its own past. And that, more than anything else, is what hurt hurt the most. Now, as Disney prepares to relaunch Snow White again, the question remains, can the company find a way to honor its roots while still embracing change? Can it rediscover that middle ground where progress and tradition can actually coexist instead of constantly clashing? This entire saga, Rachel Zegler's collapse, the failed film, the merchandise disaster, the viral backlash, and the Trump commentary, it all leads to one simple truth. Disney can no longer coast on its legacy alone. The studio that once defined magic, wonder, and childhood joy is now under more scrutiny than ever before. The Snow White reboot isn't just about correcting a bad movie, it's about proving that Disney still understands its audience, that it still cares about the stories that built its empire, and that it's willing to learn from failure instead of hiding behind branding buzzwords. Whether or not the next version succeeds will depend on more than just casting or CGI. It will depend on honesty, on humility, and on whether Disney is finally ready to stop preaching and start listening. Because if it fails again, it won't just be a flop. It'll be the moment people stop believing the magic can ever come back. Do you think Disney can recover from this? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood's biggest meltdowns.